Hi, I'm Bradley Sowash, jazz pianist and educator, here with another improv tip of the month. This one is called Blues Scale Finger Patterns Part 3. Having demonstrated blues scales in the popular piano keys of G, C, and F, and the keys of E, A, and D that are favored by string players, in this session we will look at the jazz keys B flat, E flat, and A flat that are favored by wind and brass players like saxophone and trumpet. So, to get us started, before we experience what goes on behind it, let's experience what it sounds like. So to do that, I've set up a backing track to take me through today's three keys of B flat, E flat, and A flat. I'll play some blues using the scales and starter patterns that we're going to look at in this brief session, which is 30 or so minutes. But let's just get the sound in our ears. And I'm going to be using a jazz blues. That means it has a few extra chords in it. And if you don't know what that is, we can explain that some other time, because these are the keys that jazz players prefer. So we're starting B flat, and then the backing track should automatically go to E flat and then to A flat. So 3 times through. Let's just listen to the sound of jazz blues. 2, 3. Go to E flat. Forgot what key I was in. Let's go to A flat. We could name that tune Blues in 3 Keys. So if you're just getting here, I'm Bradley Sowash, and we're going to be doing a look at the blues scales in the keys of B flat, E flat, and A flat. We will review how those are constructed. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about some keys that blues is associated with, and then the fingerings. That's what we're interested in, the finger patterns that work on the piano, and then I'll leave you with some starter licks. Blues scale construction. We probably know a little bit about blues scales already, especially if you watch the last 2 sessions. Each session that I've done on this topic, this series, I've introduced a different way to understand the construction of a blues scale. So in the first session, we talked about it being scale-based. We took a regular major scale. This is C major. We took out the 4th and 7th degrees, which left us with C, D, E, G, A, C. And then we added an E flat. So it's a pentatonic scale, C, D, E, G, A, C, plus a flat third. And that gave us what we call the bright blues, which is kind of like a major blues sound. And then we talked about a way to make that based off of a dark blues or minor blues sound, taking that from a minor scale. So C natural, let's do it in A. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, natural minor. We could think about that scale, reduce it to its pentatonic basis, A, C, D, E, G, and then we're at an E flat. A, C, D, E flat, E, G, A. So that's a scale-based way to come up with the blues scale on the fly. Last time I talked about how blues scales can be thought of or constructed by a chord knowledge. So we take like a C or a C6, let's do that, a C6, C, E, G, A, and we'll add to that a D, or a kind of like an add 2 sound, and an E flat, C, D, E flat, E, G, A, C. So a C6, we add 2 notes, D and E flat, C, D, E flat, E, G, A, C, to get our bright blues, and to get a minor blues, or just the blues scale, we think about a minor seventh chord. So in this case, I'll do it again in A. A, C, E, G. A, C, E, G is a A minor seventh chord. We add to that an E flat and a D. In other words, we kind of fill the space between the third and seventh. So from the bottom up, A, C, D, E flat, E, G, A. I went over that in a little more detail last time. In this time, I'm going to share a third way to construct blues scales. And it works best if you've already had some experience with blues scales. So if you're new to them and just learning about them for the first time, this won't work as well. Having done it in a scale-based construction and a chord-based construction, this one I would call a relative key construction. And what I mean by that is there's some interesting parallels with how the blues scales relate. It's kind of like major scales and relative minor scales. So just as C major is a major, relative major of A minor, or we could say A minor is the relative minor of C major, because they have the same key signature and the same notes, but different tonics. That works for blues scales as well. So if you're familiar with the bright blues scale in the key of C, C, D, E flat, E, G, A, C, which we just went over, then you might have noticed that the dark blues scale or minor blues scale, sometimes just called the blues scale, has the same notes, but it starts on a different pitch. So we'll start on A and play the same notes. A, C, D, E flat, E, G, A. So that's kind of a minor sound. And then there's the same notes with a C major underpinning. Same notes, but they kind of mean a whole different thing because of the harmonic underpinning. So if you know one blues scale, you can reach to the other one by using the same notes or find it to a relative key. Now that gets a little complicated on what blues scale can be used where, because they aren't fully interchangeable. If you were playing a piece of written literature in the key of C major and it moved to A minor, you could probably sound pretty good. It doesn't always work quite that way for blues. It's a little complicated, although there's some overlap. So I'll leave that aside for now and just say that this is a good technique to compare relative keys to find the blues scale you're looking for. So just to make that really clear, an A dark blues scale or minor blues scale is the same notes as a C bright or major blues scale. And it works in reverse. A C bright blues scale is the same notes as an A dark blues scale. So if you know one, you know the other. Why does this matter? Because as you get into more complex keys with more flats and more sharps, you might find yourself on thin ice not knowing what notes to find. When if you actually can connect it to a previously known scale, you are then able to do it more quickly. So just for an example, A flat bright blues scale is actually an F dark blues scale. So I play a lot of F dark blues, but I don't play so many A flats. And so when I put in that then I'm in that key, I think to myself, well, I'll just use that F blues scale or minor blues scale, and it'll sound like I'm playing an A flat bright blues scale. And indeed it does, because they are the same notes. So that probably has a couple of us having our eyes turned inside out and smoke come out of our ears, but you can dissect that later. And sometimes I write a blog to enhance these improv tips of the month with some musical examples. The point is there are three ways to construct it. Use the one that's working for you. Base it off a pentatonic scale, base it off a chord knowledge, or think about how they might be already in your fingers when you stretch into other keys. So getting back to keys, and again, I'm Bradley Sowash if you're just dropping in, and we're talking about some blues fingerings and construction. As I've said earlier, piano players love to play in G, C, and F because we can do those white key, left-hand patterns, and we can do all kinds of slide-offs from the black keys to the white keys. And string players, like guitar players, love to play in E, A, and D because those are open strings on their instrument. They're kind of like home keys or comfortable keys, especially for blues guitar playing. And then the jazz is B flat, E flat, and A flat. So we've already hit that. You may be wondering then, am I going to do a session to cover all 12? Am I going to cover D flat, G flat, and B major in another session? The answer is, drum roll, nope. Why not? Because I love to teach practical, useful teaching. And I think that 9 blues keys is probably more than any of us will ever need. after 30 years of playing jazz in every imaginable setting, from circuses to concert halls to clubs and corporate meetings and weddings, I have never been asked to play a blues in the key of B. And I hope I never am, because it's an unfamiliar key. So I'm going to leave those aside. Probably I might have once seen a D flat blues in a big band setting or something like that, but it's not likely to come up. So we'll call this the last of the 3 sessions. And those keys are not only less common, they're more difficult on our instrument. So we'll leave those aside. So let's look at the fingerings for B flat. That would probably be the most common key you will encounter as a musician or as a teacher of pianists who, for example, may be entering a jazz band in high school or college, and they're used to reading all the music, and they're called upon to play a solo in a blues, which they will surely encounter because blues pieces for educational big band settings are just ubiquitous. So the problem on our instrument is the topography doesn't make it as obvious as the other ones which we have done so far. So let's take a look for a minute at a B flat bright blues. That's the one that has the notes in it 1, 2, flat 3, natural 3, 5, 6. In other words, it's a pentatonic scale with a flat third. So here it is: B flat, C, D flat, D, F, G, B flat. If you're at a piano now, you might just try that. B flat, C, D flat, D, F, G, B flat. So how we're going to finger that is we're going to think about our thumb being centered on the note D, or the third. And with our thumb laying on that D, we get a hand setup that looks a little bit like that. And that makes D, F, G, B flat the top notes. I'm starting in the middle of the scale because it's comfortable for the hand. So think about, in a way, not from a tonic point of view, but in terms of how your hand feels on the keyboard, as D being the sort of hand position that gets us into a natural hand setting. D, F, G, B flat. You could think of this as a B flat 6th chord in first inversion. You could think of it as a G minor 7 chord in second inversion. Or you could think of it as the top half of a bright blues scale. So the bottom notes, B flat, C, and D flat, just have to be dealt with independently with a lot of 1, 2, or 1, 3 crossover. So we're going to start on 3, put our thumb on C, 3 on D flat, thumb on D, and now we're back to that hand position I talked about. So let me call those fingerings out again, starting on B flat with our third finger, 3, C is 1, D flat is 3, D is 1, and we're right up 2, 3, 4. So that, the notes that you play, the fingers that you play on the black keys are a little bit optional. You may choose, for example, in the D flat to use your second finger, and that's fine. So in that case, we would play B flat, 3, 2, or 1 on C, and then you can put 2 or the second finger on D flat if that feels better. So that crisscrossing of the thumb can be the third or the second finger. And let's put that in context. Now, the reason we want to finger these is that we want to think about those for long, fast runs. When we are thinking through finger patterns that are for little licks that are in a particular area, we don't need to stay to these fingerings by any means. But when we want to do a long run, such as those kind of lightning fast runs, you want to know your fingering ahead of time. And if I were just to mess around here with B flat, I would not worry about the fingering. I would just aim for the notes. So that's important to realize. They aren't like strict fingerings that we must adhere to. So just want to make sure. Okay, yeah, just sometimes I get a notification where things aren't going right, but sounds like I'm still with you. Now let's look at the dark blues, or the minor blues for B flat. And here's where we're going to get into the gist of this class today. So those notes, hopefully you've already thought about them on your own, are B flat, D flat, E natural. That's your raised fourth or lowered fifth. F, A flat, B flat. Let me say it again. B flat, C, D flat, E natural, F, A flat, B flat. A nice way to test if you are playing this scale is to get that famous lick associated with Eric Clapton. It sounds like this. Starting on the top of the blues scale and mostly just coming straight down. Everybody kind of knows that famous groovy lick, and that can be a way to test with your ear if you have the right notes. So B flat, D flat, E flat, E, F, A flat, B flat. Now, if you're sitting at a piano and you want to play a 2-octave run with that, you'll find you have a problem right away, because we are on our 4th finger on a black key here, B flat, and now we have to go on to a D flat. And so what do I put my pinky there? And now I'm really twisting inside out, and it's just not gonna go work out. I'm gonna go ahead and change my camera for a minute to show you the problem on the keys. So here it is. As long as I have the camera on, let me back up. I'll just show the bright blues for a moment. That's what we talked about a minute ago. And you can see it on the camera now. Let's now go to the dark blues, or the minor blues, or the blues. And here's how we're fingering it. Thumb on E. You can get that quite fast. You can get very comfortable. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. And here's the problem. The next note is D flat if I'm going to run. So I have no way to get to it, right? So I could hop, and then I've got this jerky sound and so on, and that may be a sound you're after. But here's the cheat. There's a cheat involved for pianists. We're going to add a note that we just need because of the way our instrument is built. For those long runs, we're going to put our thumb on C. We're going to use this as a pivot to the 2nd octave. So here's my blues scale, and here it is in the 2nd octave. But here's my note that helps me launch into that 2nd octave. So let's look at that in slow motion. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Cheating note, C. So that's not in the blues scale, but it doesn't sound bad. And then we're finish the fingering as before. So again, there's my C, and that gets me set up for the ride home. And now I'm able to do a long, fast run on that because of that note giving me a pivot point. One comment on that: the pivot point is not necessarily on the bottom because it's not necessary. It's not useful. No C there. C is here only if we're going on. However, having played the scale, if you do accidentally play a C here, no harm done. It's just really not quite as bluesy. It's more there for technical reasons, and I think that's a great cheat. Now, here's the good news. If you're going to do these in the key of E flat, we're going to use the same exact fingering. So just as we played the bright blues in B flat, in E flat, nothing changes, just the pitches. The topography is just the same. So again, on the bright blues or the major blues, and I have that comfortable hand position based on the thumb on G, which gives me an E flat 6 or a C minor sort of setup for my hand. Okay, now let's look at the dark blues scale for that. Here are the notes. E flat, G flat, A flat, A natural, B flat, D flat, E flat. And if we're going to play that in a small zone, we don't need to worry about fingering too much, but if we're going to do a long stretch, we're going to use that exact same trick in the dark blues that we used on the B flat dark blues in the key of E flat dark blues. So we're going to have to put in a cheat note. And that cheat note in E flat, like it was in B flat, is adding a 2nd scale degree that doesn't belong there. So let's look at that for a minute. Notice I would have trouble going on to the next black key, so I'll cheat by playing an F. Now I have a way to get my hand set up. We can, play nice quick licks because we have that. And an F on the bottom is optional. So we have that pivot note, that cheat note that nobody's going to worry about, especially if you're playing a blistering run, and who's keeping track anyway, right? So the last scale I want to share with you is the key of A flat. And in A flat, the bright blues is A flat, B flat, C flat, even though it's a B, we're going to call it that for theory reasons. C natural, E flat, F. So how are we going to finger that? Well, how I do it is 2, 3, 1 on the B, and that can feel kind of surprising because it's kind of a major key, and we aren't used to playing that white key, that flat third in a major key. So that feels kind of surprising to trained hands. And then finish it out. 2, 3, it's very easy. Get underneath there. And then we get to an F, and then repeat it. So specifically, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Okay, so that one. Now, that is a little bit uncomfortable for me. It's hard for me to think about that, to be honest. I don't love doing that. So I'll show you a cheat for that. If you have played F blues scales, talked about this earlier, that's an F dark blues scale, but we're in the key of A flat. Why are we bringing that up? Because an F dark blues scale is kind of like a relative minor to an A flat bright blues scale or major blues. And so if I'm playing an A flat, to be honest, I find it easier to play a very familiar F dark blues scale, but it comes across as a major sound. So let's check that out. I can really blister around on that because F's been in my hands for a long time. Yes, the starting note is A flat, but by setting my hand position into that F shape, my hands know what to do. So that may be useful for you if you've played some blues, and it may be mind-boggling if you have not. And so take it or leave what works for you. The last scale I want to show you the fingering for today is the A flat dark blues. And so the notes for that, A flat, C flat, D flat, D natural, that's your raised fourth or flat 5, E flat, G flat, A flat. A flat, B flat, D flat, D natural, E flat, G flat, A flat. So how are we going to finger that? Again, if we're playing licks, who cares? If we're playing long runs, it actually works out to, in this key, for some reason, we don't really need a cheat note. So it works out like this. 2, 3. I'm sorry, I gotta sort this out. 2, 3, 4. That's what I'm doing. So the key note here, you can tell I don't play an A flat very often, is to keep your thumb on B, to know that it's anchored on B. So we play the A flat, in a way we throw that away, and then do some thumb crossing with 3, 1 or 2, 1. And then we have a little bit of a stretch, A flat to B. So we want to make sure you get your fourth finger on A flat. So let's look at it slowly. Start setting the second octave. So you're not likely to hit A flat very often, but it will come up because with transposing instruments in the keys of the B flat or E flat, this is an easier key for them. It's a good time to just mention, if you're a little bit lost in the theory on this, I do have some resources that go more deeply into this, which I'll ask Tanya to post. One of them is a boogie lickopedia, which gets into the boogie style licks, such as and then I have a shuffle blues, which is a little bit more like the jazz blues PDF, which can be downloaded. For teachers, there's a nice resource called Learning and Teaching the Blues. So it works both in training you as the teacher and working with the students. And then if you really want to go deeply into this, I have a pre-recorded course called Intro to Blues, which might be of interest. So those are all guiding you to resources, not so much advertisements, just ways that I can share more information with you. So let's look at some starter licks here. You might have noticed as I was working through this that I talked about putting that thumb into a position which sets up the hand. So for example, in B flat, we talked about a B flat bright blues having the thumb on D. D, my thumb is on D, and then D, F, G, B flat. Again, a G minor 7 or a B flat 6 chord if that works for you. So have that hand position there. You want to base your licks as a pianist in in comfortable positions. And this can be a problem when you see lists. They're all over the internet. You see, 30 essential blues licks all musicians need to know. And they're written by a saxophone player. And they feel horrible on your piano, right? Or a guitar player says, here is the greatest blues licks ever. And first of all, they might even be shown in tab. And you're like, what is that? And so every musician is going to find the way to play blues which feels most comfortable on their instrument. And I would argue that for a piano player, having hand setups or positions, I'm not talking about anatomy of how the hand plays, but what notes lie in one unshifting hand position. You want to use that as a basis. So if I'm on the notes D, F, G, B flat, and I'm in a blues environment, I could just take those 4 notes, D, F, G, B flat, or you could too, and make as interesting rhythms as you can. Did not stray from that. But of course, you want to be able to expand on that. So I think about the outside edges of that. And here I'll shift the camera and still get you out of here on time or close to it. I'm hardly ever on time, but let's see. So again, here's my hand set up, D, F, G, B flat. Having had some fun with that, I think, well, I'd like to expand on that. So I know that I have the bottom of that available. So in a way, I think of those as extensions, sort of from the hand anyway, even though this is the start of the blues scale as kind of an extended hand position. And the same thing on top. I have this. So this whole section is on the edge of your setup, of your hand position. So with that in mind, you can do nice little things like slide off your D flat to D. That's one of those great little jazz licks, which is a simple little nugget you can use. Just 3, the third, the tonic, and the second. And it ends on an and beat. So I went back to my hand position there, still having started on what I think of as an extension. You're watching your hands as you're doing this, not music. And so that would be my best takeaway bright blues lick. And you can do the same thing in E flat. It's exactly the same thing. And you can do pretty much the same thing in A flat. You just got to adjust your fingering. So let's just stay in B flat for a minute. What am I doing here? And look at the dark blues. So again, my hand position there, what feels good is E, F, A flat, B flat, just all in one position here, and I'll try to exploit that. So you want to at least think about that hand setup as a starting point. The other thing that you want to think about with blues scales is you can freely mix them. So if you're used to this lick, bright blues sound, or make it simple, we might just put in a little bit of the dark blues in there, and knowing that that's this, and kind of mix and match. By the way, just going up and down the scale, you can get a lot of mileage just out of that as well. So feel free, especially in a major blues, which is what most blueses are, to mix those and match them, bright and dark blues. In a minor blues, which you're not as often going to find, and I touched on this earlier, you're not able to mix those. One other quick point, and then I'll play us out. When you're working these licks, let's look at a B flat 7 chord. It has a D in it. So you can continue to play that bright blues scale, or collection of notes, all the way through the piece, including the 4 chord. E flat 7 has a D flat in it, and yet we have a D in the scale. Well, that to some ears is not pleasant, but at others it sounds bluesy. So one thing you can do is just play the bright blues scale and forget about how it works with the chord. Just use it as a blanket. E flat, B flat. Okay, now, if you want though, you can deal with the E flat by saying, well, just to give it more of a chordy E flat sound, I'll avoid that D and spend more time on the D flat. So I might do this, slow motion. So I avoided that D. I could also have done this. So it's up to you if you want to navigate the little difference between the D and the D flat as they are in the two chords between B flat 7 and E flat 7. And both work. So don't be afraid of a mismatch. Sometimes we've had a little too much theory training and we want to, we're worried about having lots of consonants, but that's not necessarily important to blues because the rub is part of it. And yet you're welcome to deal with it if you want. So last chance to ask any questions of Bradley Sowash, jazz pianist and educator, and or say anything. I'm really glad you're here. You're pretty quiet today, and that's okay because I am moving fast. I'm just glad you took some time to be with me, so I feel like I'm teaching friends and colleagues. I think what I'd like to do is just end in a B flat jazz blues. I'll play it through 3 times, and I will be sure to mix and match those scales: B flat bright blues, B flat dark blues, and some kind of mixture. And those are just going to come and go. And let's see how it goes. And we're only 5 minutes over, so that's a record, right? 2, 3. Bright blues. That's that position I talked about. Repetition is always good. Is where I cheated. Now I'm E flat. I'm in E flat. Dark blues. And we're ending A flat. Bright blues. Dark blues. Make the most of that repetition. It's supposed to end. There it goes. The band wasn't paying attention. So that's all I have for this week, and I'll just tag it here with a little ending here. Let's see. And until next time, you enjoy your creative music making journey. Bye for now.